The year 2025 Russia. Samara. On another ordinary Thursday morning, the people of Samara were brewing coffee and watching the news. On February 6th, it was reported that former Samara mayor Viktor Alexeyevich Tarkhov and his wife Natalia Tarkova had died. Their relative is being investigated for involvement in the crime and is currently in custody. The details of the incident are being clarified. Viktor Alexeyevich Tarkhov held high management positions throughout his life. During the Soviet Union, he headed the Kuybyshev Regional Executive Committee and at the same time managed 2 factories, an oil refinery and a synthetic alcohol production plant. He also managed to be part of the Regional Duma and even tried his luck by running for governor. From 2006 to 2010, Viktor held the position of mayor of the city of Samara. Here it is, a normal life success, a brilliant career, a good reputation, a happy marriage, full family prosperity, and a well-deserved retirement. In a word, bliss or well-being, whichever you prefer. But unfortunately, stories without a single dark spot almost never happen. The Tarkhov family also had their own dark corner. They didn't get along with their granddaughter, Yekaterina Belskaya. The Tarkhovs' relationship with their granddaughter just didn't work out. Arguments often broke out between the relatives, and they tried to avoid seeing each other whenever possible. At the same time, their relationship with their daughter Lyudmila, who is Katya's mother, was quite warm, and there were no serious conflicts between them. However, Lyudmila didn't have a very good relationship with the law. Back in 2020, she was tried for extorting money from Alexander Mileyev, a member of the Samara Regional Duma. Lyudmila demanded that the deputy repay a debt that, according to her, he owed to her father. She was sentenced to 7 years, and right now, at the time this video is released, Lyudmila is still in prison. Therefore, it's possible that Ekaterina, Lyudmila's daughter, simply followed in her mother's footsteps. I'm talking about Katya. She's quite a headstrong girl with a fiery temperament, which became part of the reason for her complicated relationship with Tarkova. Lyudmila's grandparents had a strained relationship with her, as the Tarkovs did not like her. Katya is not allowed in my house. I won't let her cross the threshold, Natalia said when her granddaughter planned to visit. And they paid for her rented apartment. They did this not so much for her, but for their great-grandson. Katya didn't work anywhere and had no income, and although the Tarkovs provided her with money, the girl was still indignant. It's nothing living in luxury. You can't be so greedy. Katya asked her relatives for more than they were willing to give her, and that was the main reason for their misunderstanding. One day, Katya's father, or rather her stepfather, Sergei Loginov, came to Samara to visit his daughter. He, just like Lyudmila, had problems with the law, and his were much more serious than his wife's. Sergei, nicknamed Lord, was well known in criminal circles. He committed major thefts, kept illegal weapons at home, and was once arrested. He was repeatedly convicted and spent a couple of decades in prison for organizing an attempted murder of a high-ranking person and for all these actions. But in recent years, Sergei had no problems with the law and was free. That day, he and Katya had a conversation that went something like this. "Well, Katyush, how are you doing?" Sergei asked gently. "Yeah, it's tough, Seryozha," she sighed. "I really need money, but it's never enough. Grandpa and Grandma are always dissatisfied." Her voice became more irritated. "Nothing ever pleases them. I wish I could just shake them off." "You don't think so? Hey, well, what's wrong with you?" Sergei was calming Katya down, saying, "You have to love Grandma and Grandpa, hug them more often, and they'll start offering you money out of kindness." He smiled. "But even after that talk..." Katya is clearly not herself, he thought then. Maybe she's using something? God forbid. Even though he didn't believe that his daughter was seriously planning something bad, he decided to warn the Tarkovs just in case. He himself wasn't on close terms with them and their relationship was a bit strained, so he thought it would be better to ask Andrei Kuznetsov, an old friend and former colleague, to pass on the news. Kuznetsov listened carefully to Sergei and promised to definitely pass his words on to Tarkov. But as soon as Andrei mentioned the names of her father's granddaughter in Viktor's presence, he immediately protested, waved his hands, and angrily said, "I don't want to hear a word from that person, and especially not from Katya." And so this strange incident ended. The life in the Tarkov family went on. Nothing changed in their relationship with Katya, and everyone soon forgot about that conversation. But this would only last for a couple of years. The year 2024 was coming to an end, and the pre-New Year season in Samara was cheerful. Everyone was gradually bringing home Christmas trees and wrapping gifts for friends and relatives. No one even suspected that at the same time something terrible was being prepared. On a frosty December day, when long lines of people bundled up in warm jackets and scarves formed in the stores, one girl broke away from the crowd and turned into a hardware store. The new customers' shopping list at the hardware store was strange for the holiday season. Plastic barrels of 300 liters canisters with alkaline solutions, a small saw, and large black bags. One person carried tangerines, another had chocolate boxes, and the girl in the long black down coat dragged everything into the house. A man was waiting for her at the entrance. "So, did you buy everything?" he asked in a lowered voice. "Not yet. I'm thinking about where we can find nitrogen. We'll finish shopping in a couple of days and then we can start." "Let's go already. It's cold and help me carry all this. I'm tired of dragging all this stuff," and the couple disappeared into the entrance. The next day, someone knocked on Viktor and Natalia's door. "Vitya, can you see who it is, please?" Natalia shouted to her husband from the next room. "Just a second." Viktor got up from his chair, walked to the door, and looked through the peephole. "Yeah, damn it," Viktor said irritably. "Natasha, is it Katya again?" Ta asked tiredly again. "Yeah, what does she want this time?" "Yeah, obviously it's money. She never has any other reason to visit us." "Grandpa, please open up. I just want to talk calmly. Calmly. You're usually not good at that. Go away. We've already given you money. Don't push your luck." But Katya was persistent, and after a couple of minutes, the lock finally creaked and the door opened a little. "What do you want? Grandpa, let me in." "Honestly, I just want to talk, though I don't really feel like it." Tarkov opened the door wider and Katya entered the apartment. The conversation, which had already started off unfriendly, continued in raised voices. "I'm not going to sign anything," Viktor exclaimed again. "You'll get us involved in something, find a job first, and then you can sign whatever you want yourself." "Grandpa, let's not argue." Katya tried to ease the tension. "I'll make some tea now, and we'll settle everything peacefully." The clinking of cups, the banging of drawers, and the sharp click of the boiling kettle button, but along with the tea bags, some kind of powder will go into 2 mugs. So Katya will continue once Viktor and Natalia have taken a few sips. "Look, there's nothing special here, it's just..." But then Viktor started coughing and Natalia also began to look unwell. The Tarkovs will barely have time to rasp out water, and then, after just a minute of convulsive coughing, the wheezing will fade away. "Well, that's it. The relatives are taken care of," Katya will say, "and now we need to clean all this up quickly." The girl will carefully open the front door and look around. No one is there. It's safe to go. Everything that was recently bought at the hardware store, Katya started carrying into the apartment. The barrels were big and hard to carry, so the girl had to make several trips. Several basins appeared in the apartment, a canister with alkaline solutions and a couple of barrels labeled nitrogen. Now it was time to clean up, and it had to be done very thoroughly. Pulling on rubber gloves, Katya poured the contents of the canisters into the basins, but no acrid smell hit her nose or spread around. No sign of it in Shaloki's apartment. Armed with a rag, Katya carefully wiped every corner, every table, and every cup in the bathroom to remove any unnecessary traces from the apartment. The faucet turned, water splashed, Katya needed to rinse the rag, the water stained with blood flowed away, carrying bits of vessels with it. A few fleshy pieces got caught on the grate, Katya carefully nudged them and they fell down the drain. When the cleaning was done, the next part was about to begin, a rather risky part for Katya, hiding the evidence. But Katya had figured out how to pull that off too. Gloves, rags and everything else the police shouldn't find went into black trash bags. And very soon, these bags would end up in different parts of the city. Katya took out her phone and dialed a number. After a couple of rings, a friendly female voice came from the receiver. "Good afternoon, this is the taxi service. How can I help you?" "Hello, I would like to order a car to the city center," Katya said, giving the address. "The car will arrive in 6 minutes, a black Volkswagen number 517. "Please wait." Time dragged on unbearably long. Anxious, Katya shifted from foot to foot, waiting for the taxi. Finally, the black Volkswagen stopped at the entrance. The girl took the bag and, hiding it behind her leg, walked up to the car. "Where are we going?" the man behind the wheel asked with a smile. "To Krasnoy Army, please. Turn into that yard over there, if you don't mind." After paying, Katya got out of the car and pretended to walk toward the entrance, holding the bag in front of her so the taxi driver wouldn't notice, waiting until the car disappeared around the corner. The girl quickly walked toward the garbage bins that stood nearby. After looking around once more, Katya opened the lid of the bin. "There's too much trash in here," she muttered in annoyance. "It needs to be at least half empty." The neighboring bin turned out to be just like that. The black bag landed with a rustle on the trash lying on top. The plastic lid closed behind it and Katya headed back. The city was living its usual life at that time, and somewhere New Year's music could be heard. Bundled up in warm clothes, people hurried about their business, carrying tinsel and tangerines in their bags. And through this everyday city bustle walked a girl in a black down jacket with white hair sticking out from under her hat. No one even suspected that just a couple of hours ago the person who had just passed by had brutally dealt with two old people. And once again, the familiar house, finished with beige tiles, the entrance and the black railings twisted into beautiful spirals. Katya went up to the right floor and entered the apartment again, quiet and clean. Taking the second bag, she ordered a taxi again, but this time from another company. The nearest car would arrive in 15 minutes. "Please wait, Katya will tell the new taxi driver to go to Nikitinskaya. Be so kind." So one more time, after ordering a taxi several more times, Katya delivered the remaining bags. "Well then," she thought, returning after her last trip to the city dumps with the evidence. "Now we've finished what we actually started all this for." And once again, slamming the entrance door, Katya started climbing up to the now completely cleaned apartment. Drawers and cabinets were opening and slamming, papers were rustling, something was clinking. "Where does Natashka keep her stuff?" Katya grumbled, opening yet another drawer in the old folks' room, and all these trinkets are no longer needed to be shared. Katya took out all the jewelry boxes and little cases she could find in Natalia and Victor's room and started sorting through the jewelry inside. Earrings, rings, bracelets, necklaces. In short, it was like a whole jewelry store, and an expensive one at that. These pieces were simply priceless. But Katya was planning to fix that and assign a higher price to each piece. After making sure that not a single shiny trinket was left gathering dust in the corner, Katya headed to the tall cabinet, pulled up a chair, and started inspecting the top shelves. "Yeah, where did you stuff them?" she muttered under her breath. Finally, something white appeared in one of the wardrobe's compartments in the far corner. Standing on tiptoe, the girl reached out her hand, and immediately files with papers rustled in her fingers. Now Katya had not only expensive jewelry at her disposal, but also the car documents. She still had to remember to take them. Their phones and passports were probably somewhere by the door or in a bag. A few minutes later, those were found as well. Katya packed everything she needed into the bag, took one last look around the apartment where the Tarkhov family no longer lived, and headed home. Katya jingled her keys and opened her apartment door. "Mom," a joyful child's voice rang out. "Mom, hi. Hi, son," she replied. Katya hugged the boy who ran up to her. He hugged her back and looked at her questioningly. "Where have you been for so long?" Katya's heart skipped a beat, but she calmly replied, "Mom had some errands to run. I had to stay a little longer. Let's go. You're hungry. We'll eat now." And putting the bag up higher so the boy wouldn't suddenly want to get it, she went to change her clothes. It was even a bit creepy. How can the day go on so normally, even though just recently someone was killed by your own hands? When the bodies are hidden, the evidence destroyed, and the crime scene cleaned up, it's time to go back and keep living. Your family is waiting at home, and your colleagues are waiting at work. None of them need to know what their loved one has done. The criminal will continue living their old life, at least until someone knocks on their door. The same goes for Katya. Katya needs to be fed and taken to kindergarten in the morning. That's why she was once again a mom, warming up soup for her child and giving her warm tea with cookies. The clock showed 10 p.m. Barely managing to put her son to bed and close the door to his room, Katya quickly went to her bag, which was still lying on the tall counter in the hallway. "Well, it's time to get rich," she said quietly. Trying not to make noise, she laid out everything she had taken from her relative's apartment on the table. Katya was calculating how much her grandmother's jewelry would be worth, and after she finished with the jewelry, she started on the documents. "Toyota recreational active vehicle." Katya typed into the search engine. "How much can I ask for you?" The amount turned out to be large, which of course made the girl happy. After finishing her calculations, she realized she had used up all the jewelry and documents, and she put the phones and passports of her deceased relatives away. Tomorrow will be the day of sales, thought Katya, and with that thought she went to bed. Thus passed the day of the Tarkhov family murder. The evidence was hidden, the valuables were stolen, and very soon they would be sold. The exact date is still unknown, so how much time has passed since Victor and Natalia's death is also unknown. The new year will be celebrated with joy and noise. At first, no one will notice the absence of the Tarkovs, but literally a couple of days after the start of 2025, the first suspicions will begin to arise. On January 3rd, Victor was supposed to have his 77th birthday. Andrei Kuznetsov, Victor's very friend, was one of the first to dial the birthday man's name that day. "Well, old friend, happy birthday to you, wishing you health as strong as steel, never let your spirits down, and spoil your Natasha more often." 77 is a beautiful number, but these words will not be spoken in the morning, nor in the afternoon, nor the next day, in fact, never. There's definitely something fishy here, thought Andrei, and decided that he should report his suspicions to the police. He explained that since the end of December he had been trying to reach his friend Viktor Tarkhov, the former mayor, and that his birthday was on the 3rd. But even then, he didn't answer Andrei's call, and to this day, no one has been able to reach either him or his wife. Andrei said that this worries him a lot and asked for action to be taken. The police promised to look into it, but days and weeks went by with no news, and people gradually began to forget about the strange event. They disappeared and seemed missing, but now it's quiet. No alarm, they've been found. So, our Tarkovs are likely fine. What could happen to them? It's New Year's, so there's no need to scare or panic anyone. In February, the police knocked on the Tarkov's door. "Viktor Alexievich, please open the door," but there wasn't a sound from the apartment. The officers waited, just in case the people had gone somewhere or left, but after a day, no one came back. The friends and acquaintances who were questioned claimed that they hadn't been in touch with Viktor and Natalia lately, and couldn't say anything about their whereabouts. So, we break the lock. That was the decision, and the police got to work. The apartment greeted them with icy silence and crystal cleanliness. "No bodies found," announced a rough male voice. "Search the apartment?" "Not a single piece of jewelry," said one of the officers. "All drawers and jewelry boxes are empty, no signs of struggle, and furniture is undisturbed. No blood stains have been found, but that doesn't mean they're not there. We need to check the security camera footage, and the cameras showed some very interesting footage. On footage more than a month old, you could see a girl in a black down jacket carrying huge barrels and canisters for several hours, and after some time, she would leave the building with black bags, get into different cars, and drive away." Sergeant frowned. "So here's the plan of action. We call our acquaintances again and ask who might have had a grudge against Tarkhov, seal the apartment and return to the station, and the police left the apartment building." "Good afternoon. This is the investigative department of the Samara police. Sorry to bother you again." Yes, good afternoon," they replied impatiently. "Vitya and Natasha are safe and well. Unfortunately, we did not find Viktor and Natalia Tarkhov. In this regard, I have to ask you a few questions. Do you know if they had any enemies at all?" "They are peaceful people, they don't really argue with anyone, but their granddaughter Katya Belskaya Sergeyevna, they can't stand her at all." "Belskaya. You're right, she's always asking them for money, even though she already lives off their support." "Well, at least that's what we were told. Thank you for the information." The man hung up the phone and immediately said loudly, "Yekaterina Sergeyevna Belskaya, find out the address and we're heading out." Red and blue lights on the roof of the police car, the wail of a siren, several police officers are going up the stairs of an apartment building. "Yekaterina Sergeyevna Belskaya," a police sergeant said sternly. "Please open the door." The door opened slightly and Katya's blonde head appeared from behind it. "You are suspected of murdering Viktor and Natalia Tarkhov. In connection with this, an order has been given to escort you to the station and search your apartment." "I'm not going anywhere, I have a child," Katya protested as the people in uniform approached her. "Show your identification and warrant." "Here is my identification, here is the warrant," the female officer said with a sigh, showing her credentials to the child. "Don't worry, father, uncle, aunt, are there any?" "There's no one. My father is abroad," Katya muttered in response. "Alright, let us handle this, we'll sort it out later, let's go." And then, after handcuffing the girl, they took her to the car. During the interrogation, she stayed silent while the investigator, sitting across from Katya, spoke sternly. The surveillance cameras in the Tarkhov's house clearly show how the bags and barrels were being carried out. Moreover, even the records of purchases at all the hardware stores were confirmed. Silence. "You do realize that you are the only suspect and that all the evidence points to you. Everyone interviewed unanimously says that you often had conflicts with Viktor and Natalia. Suddenly, right before New Year's, when everyone is celebrating and no one cares about anyone's disappearance, the Tarkovs vanish, their apartment is spotless, and all the jewelry boxes are suspiciously empty. But Katya still didn't say a word. Alright, in that case, we'll wait for what the forensic experts have to say. The female officer slammed the folder shut and Katya was taken to the holding cell. New details became known very soon. They reported that lie covered the victim's entire apartment. They reported about the passports and phones found in Katya's apartment and about the 3 million rubles that Belskaya received from selling jewelry and a car, but where that money was kept could not be determined. That day, all of Samara could have been said to shudder in horror, but no, nothing like that happened. In the morning, turning on their TVs and YouTube, expecting to hear the weather forecast or some other neutral nonsense, people heard ominous words. This morning, February 6th, it became known about the death of the former mayor of Samara, Viktor Alexievich Tarkhov, and his wife, Natalia Tarkova. Ekaterina Belskaya, the couple's granddaughter, has been detained as a crime suspect. The bodies of the victims have not been found and many valuable items such as jewelry are missing from the apartment. According to the investigation, the young woman committed intentional homicide out of personal animosity and killed in order to take her relatives' valuable belongings. A criminal case under Article 105 of the Russian Criminal Code has been opened and the investigation continues. Many found it hard to believe that on New Year's Eve, amid happiness and champagne, a young, attractive woman was mutilating her own grandparents' bodies. Some thought maybe it wasn't really their granddaughter Katya, the fragile girl, the blonde fashionista. Yes, it just couldn't be her who did that to the old folks. People held their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. The very next day, on February 7th, forensic experts thoroughly examined the Tarkhov's apartment and found traces of blood and bits of flesh in the bathtub drain. They also found several more documents through which Belskaya received another 1 million rubles, although these papers turned out to be forged. Investigators also searched the garbage bins for the ill-fated bags. Almost a month passed in this tense hustle. Katya still remained silent, and even the official charges did not make her talk. Alongside investigating the deaths, the police were also handling Katya's son. Investigators conducted a psychological examination with him, trying to find out if the boy knew about what had happened, but apparently he either didn't know or didn't notice. Since there were no relatives who could take care of the child, he was temporarily placed in the care of Belskaya's friend. The investigators remembered Katya's words, "There is no one, my father is abroad." That's when it turned out that several years ago, Katya had been married to Vladislav Pasek, and for some time the couple lived in Israel. But when their son was born, a serious quarrel broke out between Katya and Vlad. It dragged on, and eventually the conflict ended radically. The couple decided to separate. Belskaya packed her things and went back to Samara, while her 2-month-old son stayed abroad with her husband. But this didn't last long. About 3 weeks later, Katya returned to take her child. Without Vlad's approval, she took her son with her to Russia, which was completely illegal. It wasn't hard to find Vladislav's contact information. When he saw an incoming call from a Russian number starting with +7, Pasek was surprised, but he still answered the call. "Good afternoon, Vladislav. I have to inform you about a recent incident." What he heard next shocked the man, and he remained silent on the phone for a long time after the police officer finished speaking. Vladislav asked, "Officer, are you there?" "Yes, I am. I'm just in shock." "I completely understand you, but I'm calling about your son. Will you pick him up?" "Yes, I will." "When and if paternity is confirmed?" "Here in Israel we have a certain bureaucratic procedure if the mother is not a citizen of the country. We didn't have time to register the child as my son." That was the end of the conversation, and while the issue of Vladislav's paternity is being resolved, his son was sent to an orphanage. Katya still refused to talk, but on February 28, they finally managed to break her. All the evidence is against you, the investigator repeated again. You can't avoid prison, but a confession and cooperation with the investigation could reduce your sentence. And grimacing, Belskaya finally said, "Fine, yes, I killed them, and yes, it was for money. We'll be satisfied if you show us where you hid the evidence and tell us what you did with the bodies." That same day, a police unit, accompanied by Katya, went to the addresses the girl had named. She pointed out the bins where she had tossed the evidence bags a month earlier. "What happened to the bodies?" asked a stern voice. "I froze them in nitrogen," Katya replied in a muffled voice. "Then I dismembered them and scattered the parts in dumpsters too." "A fragile girl like you dismembered the bodies?" The investigator raised an eyebrow skeptically. "Maybe there was an accomplice after all." "Yes," the girl forced out, but no matter how much they questioned her, she never gave his name. The case of the Tarkhov's death is still not closed, and the investigation continues to clarify the circumstances. Yekaterina Belskaya, who is already facing at least 20 years for murder and fraud, is awaiting her sentence. In the meantime, I'll try to figure out what kind of person Yekaterina is. I think she is a cold, calculating, impulsive, egocentric person with an antisocial personality structure and probably has traits of narcissistic or psychopathic disorder. There is a clear logic in her actions, a cynical attitude toward family ties, and a complete lack of empathy. She didn't just take a life, she planned everything in advance, prepared, bought lime, nitrogen, barrels and bags. It wasn't an outburst of emotion, but a consistent execution of a plan. Afterwards, she dismembered the bodies, cleaned the apartment, destroyed the evidence, and immediately moved on to the selfish part, selling property, jewelry, and forging documents. All of this points to cold emotionality, high executive ability, and a complete lack of remorse. Katya easily assumes a social role, for example, acting as a mother cooking soup right after a brutal crime. This indicates a split between her inner and outer self. Such behavior is characteristic of people with severe antisocial personality disorder, which used to be called psychopathy. She exhibits pronounced emotional dullness and superficiality. There is not the slightest sign of remorse, empathy, or even guilt in her behavior. She remained silent until the very end and then confessed only under the pressure of evidence. She has a high level of planning and control. She thought through the details of the taxi transportation, her alibi, cleaning the apartment, and disposing of the bodies. This means that her judgment is intact, her thinking is not distorted, she is not psychotic, and she is sane. She had a selfish motive, which was combined with personal malice. She hated her grandmother and grandfather for refusing her money, but at the same time believed she had a right to that money. Such thinking is paranoid criminal and is characteristic of pathological narcissism. Probably this was also influenced by the behavior model of her father, a criminal authority figure. There could have been distorted moral norms in the family, contempt for those who don't give, and justification of violence as a way to get what you want. The main diagnosis is dissocial personality disorder, which means antisocial behavior, violation of social norms, disregard for the rights of others, lying, manipulation, violence, and lack of remorse. Against this background, there are probably also traits of narcissistic disorder. They explain her sense of grandiose righteousness and her conviction that she is owed something. If she had a history of severe traumatic experience or childhood abuse, we could talk about traumatic dissociation or borderline disorder, but in this case, at least for now, this is not confirmed. And yet, despite the particular cruelty of the crime, her actions were not psychotic. She did not lose touch with reality, she knew what she was doing and why, and she is sane. Thus, Yekaterina Belskaya is a cold-blooded rational criminal with an antisocial personality structure, a high level of behavioral control, and a complete lack of morality. Her crime was not effective, it was purposeful and methodically carried out. She is dangerous, and without isolation, a relapse is quite likely. And if you want to get an analysis of your personality, you should only consider it for entertainment purposes, so I'll probably leave a post about how to do that under the video. Write what you think about this case, leave likes, dislikes, and watch other videos on the Strashnota channel. They come out, even though you don't always get notifications about it,